Welcome, friends,
to the How-To Heretic.
I'm Uncle Mark.
And I'm Uncle Dan.
And I'm Uncle Doug.
And this is your user's guide to life on the other side.
That's right. Leaving religion is your first step into a larger, better world.
But it can also be a scary world. Things work differently now.
Never fear, that's why we're here.
We're your undead uncles, and with help from good friends and experts buried in all sorts of fields.
And we would have gotten away with it, too, if it hadn't been for you pesky kids.
After all, you only get one that we know of. So you'd better make the most of it.
Well, uncles.
It's a spooky time, you guys.
Yeah, we look, there is no low we won't stoop to squeeze a laugh out of you fuckers, so please show some respect. Or
Right?
not, I don't care.
Or not.
Yeah.
And
So
you might be expecting now a totally Halloween-themed show, so prepare to be disappointed.
Prepare for a partially Halloween-themed show.
There's like a minor there's a bit of spooktacular towards the end.
Oh,
There's
the
a taste.
spooktacular. Part 3 is all spooktacular.
Yeah, there's a taste. So I'm starting with the not spooky bit, but
I don't know. It's from the Book of Mormon.
hopefully you'll enjoy getting lost with me for a while in the story of the Liahona.
And then I'm going to talk about a particularly terrible parable, at least for me, of the prodigal son returning from the dead.
Yeah, it had a spooky effect on you.
You sure did.
And then I'm actually going to talk about ghost stories.
Yeah, and it's going to be amazing. So it's a pretty fun show, except for Doug's sad bit in the middle, and but it wouldn't be us without a sad bit. So let's jump into episode 110 and do a show.
Charge!
Uncle Dan,
Hey!
do you ever feel a little directionless in life?
You know what? My whole life has been one big wander where I don't know what the fuck I'm doing or where I'm going.
No, that was just the past 4 episodes of this podcast. Hey-o.
Ba-boom! Nailed me. This show sucks.
Well, not all those who wander are lost.
Well,
But some people need a little extra help, and I think Uncle Mark's got something to help guide us.
When I took on this subject, I didn't really realize that I was yet extending another desert journey. But fuck it, we're gonna do it. We're doing it live. So, guys, I have a little bit of a confession to make this morning. So bear with me. That
this is never good. We should probably do this off the air. I don't know.
Yeah, stop recording now. Everybody just turn the podcast down for about 5 minutes. So, unlike you two faithful young men, I may not have read the Book of Mormon as voluntarily as you two did. So, I was forced to try to read it almost every morning before school and sometimes during school and all day on Sundays and oftentimes Sunday nights as well. And what 7-year-old wouldn't develop a love for this third testament of the life of Christ by being dragged out of bed at 4:30 to sit through 5 chapters of Alma?
Oh, my God.
Lord, I tried, but my brain is allergic to the hyper-aggressive boredom that this book perfects like no other. But I absorbed plenty of it despite 20 years of trying not to, and I've read the Spark Notes enough to get the basic gist, as well as doing this here podcast, which includes plenty of Book of Mormon content.
Yeah,
So,
probably too much, but, whatever.
Is there such a thing?
That's too much. But
Yes, there is. So you, dear listeners...
Any might be too much. We're not sure.
You, dear listeners, don't have to read it. And please, people, take this piece of advice as the only one you'll ever really need. If you have not read the Book of Mormon, do not read the Book of Mormon. The only results will be your finite life being many precious hours shorter, right, and a general persistent numbness in the area just above the top of the neck and directly under the hair. But if you must know what this masterpiece of rock in the hat, rapid translative dictation is all about, let me briefly summarize. I was getting a sip of water.
Yeah, you need that. Lube
It's
up.
basically the story of a madly dysfunctional Jewish family in Jerusalem that was really terrible at remembering things or making packing lists, but somehow stupendously good at building huge boats, and then getting lost in the desert for a spell before going on a weird transatlantic sailing trip to the Americas, almost 2,000 years before Columbus, and then building up huge civilizations with all their horses and elephants and steel and Hebrew goings-on. But then Jesus showed up for a while, and long story short, that just resulted in the naughty people turning brown, and that's how Jews ended up becoming the Native Americans. And then the last white Jew in pre-Columbian America had to hot step it all the way from Guatemala to somewhere near Niagara Falls with about 900 pounds of gold that he buried on the edge of what would become Joseph Smith's farm in the fullness of time. Oh, and shit, he wasn't the only white Jew to survive. There are 3 others, and I say are because they're immortal now and seem to hang out mostly on rural state roads in central Utah between Wallsburg and Sulphurdale. Oh, and in the last third of the book, the author began running out of names, so he started adding anti to the front and ha to the back of names from earlier chapters. Oh, and there's a cool prequel where people cross the Atlantic with horses and elephants in unpropelled wooden submarines with huge corks in the bottom. Yes, corks in the bottom of motherfucking submarines to clean out the poo. It's a masterwork, really.
That's quite
much
the
literature.
That's quite the summary there.
Right, I kind of wrapped it all up, don't you think?
Well, I think if our listeners want the full experience of reading the Book of Mormon, they can listen to your summary and then go put their head in the refrigerator door and slam it shut.
Yeah.
turn on the gas in the oven, wait about 10 minutes, then put your head in.
There you go.
So, and for those familiar with the Bible, you'll find great familiarity with the dozens of chapters in the Book of Mormon, cut and pasted directly from Isaiah, so that's neat. But in today's Holy Technology segment, I want not to talk about this whole dismal shit splat of a book, but rather a little treasure buried within this tale of mysteriously capable boat builders and ancient battles with 500,000 casualties. A treasure that, like the plates upon which this epic saga of name repurposing was buried in that humble hillside in upstate New York. Today's piece of technology is the Liahona.
The whoa-whata?
Da ha-ha.
What are you talking about?
Well, let me tell you. The Liahona is a funny little doodad that shows up one morning outside Lehi's tent in the Book of Mormon. Lehi's family had fled Jerusalem because he prophesied it was going to be destroyed, except there were a couple times where they went back because they forgot some shit. And on one of those return trips, Lehi's son Nephi decapitates a sleeping man. These are the good guys. So Lehi's idiot family was trying to get to the ocean, but then became hopelessly lost. Never mind the Mediterranean is just 37 miles from Jerusalem, and any idiot knew which direction the ocean breeze was coming from and from whence the fish they bought in the market came. But let's not let that get in the way of the truth. So, stuck as they were in the desert, with nothing to do but watch Nephi's brothers endlessly plot to kill him for no fucking reason whatsoever, they were without much hope. And it was in that moment a thingy that looks a little bit like the holy hand grenade of Antioch, or maybe the snitch from Harry Potter, appeared on Lehi's front tent porch. Brothers and sisters, please turneth now to Nephi 16, chapter 10. And it came to pass that as my father arose in the morning and went forth to the tent door, because tents have doors, to his great astonishment, he beheld upon the ground a round ball of curious workmanship, and it was of fine brass. And within the ball were 2 spindles. The one pointed the way whither we should go into the wilderness. Now, notice anything, fellas?
Yes.
It is not named in its first appearance in the book. But it does have 2 spindles. One pointed the way they should go. The other was also a spindle. So shut up. Every good compass has two needles. Stop looking at porn. So, and notice the phrase curious workmanship. This is how the author of the Book of Mormon, Joseph Smith, got out of having to go into great detail about a thing. Because like L. Ron Hubbard, he may have been a writer, but he was a super shitty one. Lazy as fuck. So, and we should note, coincidentally, with, as we mentioned in the beginning of this, with Uncle Dan mercifully ending his real-time reenactment of the Book of Exodus last week, preposterous stories of being lost in not very big deserts for an extended period are important foundational myths in the Judeo-Christian canon. So, as Joseph Smith said about his great work of cribbing and plagiarizing, a half-pound of Exodus went into the pot, along with generous helpings of Isaiah, Deuteronomy, an extremely common school book about the War of 1812, that's serious, and loads more of other people's ideas. So, back to the story of the Magic 8 Ball. 18 verses after we meet the curious brass ball in chapter 10, the idiot Nephi finally figures out how it works. Quoting the text again, And it came to pass that I, Nephi, yeah, we know who's talking, idiot, beheld the pointers which were in the ball, that they did work according to the faith and diligence and heed which we gave unto them. So, very much like another little magic MacGuffin, Tinkerbell, the curious brass Tinkerball runs on faith. The louder you clap, the norther it points. But wait, there's more. And there was also written upon them a new writing, which was plain to be read, which did give us understanding concerning the ways of the Lord. And it was written and changed from time to time, according to the faith and diligence which we gave unto it. And thus we see that by small means the Lord can bring about great things. Oh, snap. It also had a screen for the Lord to send you little jots and tittles of faith-affirming emojis, like, stop looking at porn. So it's really an incredible piece of reformed Egyptian wish-powered tech, you guys.
I'm pretty sure that Jack Sparrow had one of these, didn't he?
Oh, my God.
But unlike the whole rest of the book, like the whole rest of the Book of Mormon, First Nephi chapter 16 is full of bizarre narrative inconsistencies.
What?
I know. I'm going to break some news here. There's a lot of baffling behavior that can be written off to the protagonists being laughably stupid people with incoherent motivations, but not all of them. I give you verse 39 of the same chapter. And it came to pass that the Lord was with us, yea, even the voice of the Lord came and did speak many words unto them, and did chasten them exceedingly. And after they were chastened by the voice of the Lord, they did turn away their anger, and did repent their sins, inasmuch that the Lord did bless us again with food that we did not perish. So, in just one chapter, 38 verses, God's secret Santa's these dopes a new GPS. It doesn't fucking work until they figure out they have to believe it works, then figure out it has a text feature in one of the needles that God can text cryptic messages on. Then they end up getting pissed off at God and not obeying him, and we finish the chapter out with God just straight talking to them in his own voice. No brass Little Orphan Annie decoder ring required. And we still don't know what the second needle is for. Spoiler, we never will. Just stop looking at porn, okay? So, now remember that nowhere in that chapter 16 desert debacle did we learn the name of the cool talking brass ball. Because if Joseph Smith was as terrible a writer as he was a husband and human being, it's not until 269 pages later the thing gets a name in Alma chapter 37, verse 38.
Really? Not.
I didn't
wow,
know that,
is
yeah.
a long time to wait.
It's named once in the Book of Mormon. One time. And now, my son, I have somewhat to say concerning the thing which our fathers call a ball, or director.
This son
Just a ball.
is the ball.
It is. We are now to call it testicle.
There are some who would call me Tim.
So, or director, or our fathers called it Liahona, which is being interpreted a compass, and the Lord prepared it.
Okay, just a quick aside for our listeners. The Book of Mormon supposedly was written in an ancient language into golden plates. Mm-hmm. So that sentence that Mark that circular sentence, totally superfluous sentence that you just read, was chiseled into a gold plate that had to be carted across North America. Just
that sentence probably weighed about 8 ounces.
Exactly.
Right? So the gripping narrative continues. And behold, there cannot any man work after the manner of so curious a workmanship. And behold, it was prepared to show unto our fathers the course which they should travel in the wilderness. And it did work for them according to their faith in God. Therefore, if they had faith to believe that God could cause that those spindles should point the way they should go, behold, it was done. Therefore, they had this miracle and also many other miracles wrought by the power of God day by day, blah, blah, blah. It goes on for several more verses, but basically the point is, do not anger Happy Fun Ball. And again, because Joseph Smith believed the path to glory was paved with word count, this is all just a retelling of what happened in Nephi chapter 16, those hundreds of pages ago. But at least this time he remembered to give it a name, which some desperate Mormon apologists have tried to say means curious ball, in a language they insist is called Egyptian. But we all know Curious Ball is the name of a bi-monthly Vogue and drag event for timid young bisexuals in the East Village. That's where I met Uncle Dan, actually. Many people might not know that.
What can I say? I'm a curious person.
Into the curious ball. Another Mormon apologist obligingly continues my joke here by claiming it may actually mean queen bee in some torturous mangling of Hebrew root words, and that it may also mean to God is the guidance. Oh. Those last two come to us from the mighty queen bee of Mormon apologetics himself, the ridiculous OG Grandmaster of lying for the Lord, Hugh Nibley.
I love Hugh Nibley. I love Hugh Nibley, if only for his name, which basically was designed. Like I don't think his parents knew that they were naming him so that we wouldn't take him seriously, but that's what ended up happening.
Well, we can do a whole segment about the ridiculously named Hubert Nibley another time.
Yeah.
But in the first half of the 20th century, as all the hard sciences began to narrow the possibilities of the ginormous truth claims of massive Jewish empires in the Americas and battles with body counts as high as any mechanized battle in World War II in the Book of Mormon, he said this, and I quote, "In view of the nature of their civilization, one should not be puzzled if the Nephites had left us no ruins at all. People underestimate the capacity of things to disappear and do not realize the ancients almost never built of stone." That's right, as we all know, from the total lack of pyramids, ziggurats, castles, walled cities, tombs, fortifications, obelisks, towers, tunnels, and ancient roads, anywhere in the world, the ancients almost never built of stone.
Well, and stuff would just up and poof.
Like Kaiser Sose.
Yeah.
Just gone.
Yeah, dinosaur bones. They just disappear. But,
right.
But here's the thing about that Hugh Nibley statement is no other sad, ahistorical, easily dismantled Mormon apologetic is as important as this one. This is the big bang of pure, uncut Mormon dishonesty and self-delusion. People underestimate the capacity of things to disappear. It's an unparalleled achievement of amoral clarity, if you ask me. So that's all there is for this pre-Columbian GPS in the Book of Mormon. 3 mentions, 1 by name, 1 just a glancing reference when they're out at sea. But it navigates its way back into another great Mormon work of Liahona, its true literature, the Doctrine and Covenants, which, unlike the Book of Mormon, actually pertains to Mormonism and how it operates.
Yeah.
So it's essentially the rule book and loads of doctrine, plus the revelations of Joseph Smith, etc. And we know the church itself and the Book of Mormon are all totes true because it says so right in the book.
How can you argue with that?
So now more than ever, stop looking at porn. That's right. In the Doctrine and Covenants, section 17, in June of 1829, God commands 3 of Joseph Smith's followers, via a revelation received by Joseph Smith, weirdly enough, to find truth in his claims by viewing the golden plates, the sword Nephi killed a sleeping man with, some magic eyeglasses that used to be super important but now have been unimportanted by the church, and a thing suddenly rechristened yet again as the Miraculous Directors, yet another name for the stupid, curious brass ball, the Liahona. So, at last this ball of confusion came to rest, having appeared in the desert of ancient Judea, journeyed fairly uselessly to somewhere in Central America, and then vamoosed via white flight to Fayette, New York, so 3 guys could give it a gander and swear the church was true. How about that?
Only 1 guy gave it a gander. The other 2 were...
Yes.
Only Joseph Smith actually saw the thing. The 3 witnesses who witnessed the thing didn't see the thing.
That's right. And this is the critically important 3 witnesses fable.
Right.
And we need to do a whole segment about it on the show another time. But long story short...
That sounds like an Uncle Doug sort of thing.
It's a very Uncle Doug segment.
I'm just going to say.
Long story short, it lets Mormons sleep at night because 3 guys saw all the gold and trinkets and swore suspiciously pre-prepared affidavits that the Book of Mormon was true. But as Uncle Dan was alluding to, it seems the curious ball was as bad at convincing people of outlandish truths as it was at functioning as a compass, because the part of the story that our Mormon friends somehow forget to tell is that all 3 witnesses later denied they'd directly seen these treasures in person, and all 3 were excommunicated. So, to wrap up, Have you guys ever been cursed by a vengeful mummy and ended up owning an Epson printer? Sometimes it works, but mostly it doesn't. And when you hit print, you fucking hold your breath and pray so you might coax it into responding. And on the off chance it does respond, it spits out a piss yellow smudge rather than your presentation. The Liahona was a pre-Columbian Epson printer of curious workmanship. So fuck you, Liahona. You're a useless piece of shit. Nobody likes you. And of course, now the Liahona, like those three, the Liahona those three guys witnessed, is gone away. Just like Laban's sword, the magic and now unimportant spectacles, and even the golden plates themselves. So sadly, we can't have any more witnesses, which is such a bummer. But remember, kids, don't underestimate the capacity of things. Even all the gold and gizmos that could totes prove your one true church is indeed true to disappear. And that's the Liahona, guys.
Wow.
And listeners should Google Liahona. It's spelled as it sounds. And it's because it's just... You hit, search it in Google and hit images and just stare at that for a second.
Also, you can buy one of those at the gift shop in the Mormon Church History
Deseret
Museum.
Book, yeah. And Deseret Book as well.
Yeah.
If you believe hard enough, it's half price.
Yeah, you can. What you do is you make sure that one of the spindles points at free, and then you get it.
That's exactly right.
If you pray enough. It'll happen.
Somehow, I can't imagine what Joseph Smith was responding to when he decided to include this in the story. But any editor that had given the Book of Mormon a pass would be like, okay, you're going to take that out. Like,
you know what's interesting is there is a theory that remember how we did a segment on the Ark of the Covenant, and it's kind of a repository for incredibly holy relics,
right?
Right, that there was the manna. There was a pot of manna that Dan talked about. There was Aaron's staff, Moses' brother's staff, and there were the chunks of the Ten Commandments tablets, right?
Right.
Are in the Ark of the Covenant. And they think that Joseph Smith was cribbing, because that's what he did, off of that idea that these were like the holy relics of the Book of Mormon.
Right.
So it was, for those guys, it was like looking into the Ark.
There you go.
Right.
Yeah. So
can I just say, by the way, that if we get over 1,000 patrons, we're going to produce a Magic 8-Ball Liahona.
Oh, for real?
We will make that happen. So
I love that.
Join up.
I think that's a great idea. Absolutely. Join up.
I know. We can do it. We have the capacity.
And it'll have a little digital display like the Wonder Bible.
There you go.
It'll just give passages written by the three of us.
By the Lord.
By God.
It'll come to you from the God, your uncles.
And the little 20-sided dice inside will always just say, be reverent or stop looking at porn. So all right.
Look at porn, everybody.
Look at porn. That's the Liahona. Get lost.
Moving on. Hey, Uncle Mark.
Yes, here I am.
You've run away. You've left our country.
I have, but at some point I'm going to return.
No, you're unwelcome now.
Fair enough.
You left, and you were naughty.
Yes,
and you left here.
Yeah.
Against my will.
Yes,
and frankly, I'm not sure I want you back.
Well,
I don't know. Uncle Doug, is there any precedent that we can turn to?
We need the wisdom of Solomon.
Yeah, I'm afraid if that's your attitude, Uncle Dan, then today's story is not for you.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm open to changing my mind.
Okay. Yeah, let me try and change it to the worse.
Okay.
It's time again for another edition of Terrible Parables.
Yay.
In today's discussion, we'll be talking about a parable that is near and dear to my heart, but not in a good way. Far more like the shrapnel around Tony Stark's heart. As I'm sure it was for you, two uncles, my religious experience was terribly general and generally terrible. But this specific parable was very specifically damaging to me. As we'll discuss, because of my unique circumstances growing up, it was as though some ancient Hebrew possessed both a crystal ball and a real disdain for yours truly. So today we'll be discussing the parable of the prodigal son.
Apparently, I'm very tickled by the notion of an ancient Hebrew hating on Doug.
We'll be talking about the prodigal son today, so it's also known as the parable of the two sons, the lost son, the loving father, or the lovesick father. Prodigal, by the way, is a word meaning wastefully extravagant, and it is not mentioned in this parable. So
Is that true? I didn't know that was the... Are you serious? That's the meaning of the word?
Yeah, prodigal.
And it's been imposed upon the parable.
Yeah.
It doesn't come from any of the translations
No,
thereof.
no, it's absolutely not. So this parable only appears in the book of Luke, so it adheres at least partly to Uncle Doug's first rule of the Bible. And if you don't know what that is, look it up. So there'll be none of the cross-gospel bargain shopping our listeners have come to know and love. So let's start off just by reading the parable. It's not terribly long, and then we'll talk about what the moral problems are. And then we'll talk about why it sucked so much for me.
Okay.
So starting in Luke chapter 15, verse 11, and we're going to be in the New International Version to speed things along a bit. It says, Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth with wild living." In the King James Version, it says riotous living.
I feel targeted. Okay.
Wait, what did it say in King James?
Riotous living.
Oh, riotous living. Yeah. That sounds great.
I know. That's the story I want to hear.
That sounds wonderful. Yeah,
I feel like this so far. This story has happened to about 1 in every 3 fathers in Los Angeles. The Fire Festival. That's riotous living that we were all talking about.
After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed for his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and he went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to the father, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven. I have sinned against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick! Bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fatted calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate." We're almost there. "Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near to the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called to one of the servants and asked him what was going on. 'Your brother has come,' he replied, 'and your father has killed the fatted calf because he has him back safe and sound.' The older brother became angry and refused to go in, so his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, 'Look, all these years I have been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders, yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fatted calf for him.' And this is the last verse of the story. 'My son,' the father said, 'you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.'" There you go.
There you go.
Parable of the Prodigal Son. Now, I'm sure most of our listeners...
We should probably stop there. I think that's a good place to stop. Yeah.
My takeaway from that is, when it comes to sons, if you like it, then you should have put a ring on it.
I smelled trouble coming, so I think this is a good place to stop.
Right. So yeah, and well, you should. Many of our listeners who spent any time in a Christian upbringing will remember that parable and quite possibly have some fond memories of it. I certainly remember it being treated as one of the very best of the parables. I do think that's partly because Jesus was a shitty storyteller. And this parable, leaving aside any moral issues, has at least an easy narrative arc to follow.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, unlike many of the other parables, which are chock full of metaphors and references to Palestine 2,000 years ago, this one you can kind of get to.
Well, yeah, there's a lot less in this one. Like, I feel like I kind of get what he was getting at just on a first blush.
So let's start with the problematic nature of this parable before we get to the personal. Firstly, the younger brother asks for his entire inheritance, and his father just gives it to him. Is that how inheritance works?
Hey, you know what? That's how, if you got a cool dad, sometimes he'll just do that shit.
So he heads off
That's
to the
how
big
it worked
city.
with Fred and Donald Trump, right? He just here's $419 million, dummy. Don't blow it all in one place. Whoops, he blew it all in one place.
So this brother heads off to the big city for some riotous living, where he blows... and then he blows all his money on hookers and what must be high-grade Judean frankincense. And then he falls in hard times.
Sex workers, yeah.
Right.
Hookers is an ugly Civil War term. We're not going to use that anymore.
Right on.
Yeah.
While working a menial job, he realizes that his father's servants, who knows if they're slaves or not. We don't get that, but we'll leave that aside. They're all doing better than him. So at least according to the straight reading of the narrative, he figures out a way to go back and manipulate his way back into his father's house. It doesn't seem like a true turning of the heart or a story of redemption, right?
I don't know. He goes back. He's going to go back and he says to his dad, or at least his plan is to say to his dad, at least just let me work the fields.
Right.
Which to me, that says he's not. That doesn't reek of manipulation to me.
It smells a little bit like Saul Goodman to me, but fine.
Okay. Okay. I hear you.
Yeah. So he goes back to his father, who welcomes him back instantly, puts on a huge celebration. There's no, like, accounting. There's no, like, you know what I mean? Like, he just comes back, and there's a party. You're back. No worries. It's fine. Anyway.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the part of the story that really puts the knives to me. So,
see you guys. I have a thing.
I know.
I have some riotous living to get to.
Stay with us.
His older brother is frustrated with his father because he stayed, he tended his fields, he kept the household afloat. Yet when his brother, who had left, and by every conceivable metric had a better time, returns with nothing but a hangover, his father throws him a fucking party. As we've mentioned on this podcast before, Uncle Mark and I grew up in an environment that, let's just say, was a little bit less than loving. But even in that environment, perhaps especially in that environment, our parents would dole out the occasional kindnesses. And I think we all believed that those were finite and zero-sum. So there was a very sick competition between us brothers for the affection of our captors.
Yeah.
Anyway, Uncle Mark, much earlier than I did, decided that this whole Mormon thing was not for him. And against tremendous resistance and near constant fighting, he stopped going to church. What, Mark? 14?
I started trying at 12, and the beatings persisted until about 16, where I think they were just too tired.
They spun out like a hurricane.
Yeah.
So I saw this as an opportunity to garner what passed for our parents' love. So I went hard for Mormonism. I tried to tick off all the boxes: seminary council, BYU. I went on a mission, but this did not work. And unbelievably, Mark's stubborn refusal to go to church was met by my dad with a kind of respect, while my zealotry was met with nothing but disdain.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
because
it's true.
Fuck you.
I know, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
and so this parable, with the birth order of the brothers reversed, basically sanctified that dysfunction. And given the environment, I couldn't say a word about it to anybody.
Wow.
Every time this parable was told, it stuck a knife in my heart because it just said, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
why are you bothering to try? Like, it was terrible. And I couldn't talk to anybody about it because in that environment, you could not admit that you were having a problem with the morality of a parable, particularly this one.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
I think
it's definitely true that there were two brothers before me. So Doug's the youngest of four idiot boys, and every one of us kind of blew a hole in the completely artificial worldview my parents had constructed. And I think by the time Doug came along, he looked at three jagged paths before him and said, "Nope, I'm going to do my own, and that is I'm going to do everything you want." According to the Book of Mormon, as you said, Doug, seminary president, straight A student, dated a string of completely vapid blonde Mormon girls. That was just everything that BYU, everything they should have wanted. And they repaid all that with a level of disdain that was shocking even in our family.
it was comical at the time.
It kind of was.
It
kind of
insane.
was.
Yeah.
We would laugh about it. Like, only one of the other brothers went on a mission, and he got sent home early because he's a fucking psychopath. And so when Doug went to go, Doug put in his papers, went to go to Honduras, which was not the, happiest place for a dumb
And then,
kid
exactly.
to go. And
His
they almost
heavenly
didn't.
father shit on him.
Right.
Yeah,
in
totally.
in terms of where he had to go on his mission.
Yeah.
Love to our Honduran friends for sure, but it's a tough place for a naive, white kid from Salt Lake to go. And they almost didn't go to his farewell.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Really?
It was crazy. And,
you guys won the parental lottery. I don't know how you guys did
nailed
it.
it.
But you guys were valiant in the pre-existence, I gotta say.
But what was so fucked up?
Well, we're
is,
not black. There's that.
And I want to caveat this: Mark didn't have it easy by any stretch, any easier than any of the rest of us. There was just a particular kind of spin on the way they looked at me.
Yeah.
But every family has dysfunction, and everyone has terrible memories. But one of those dysfunctions that was so personal to me in a desperate attempt to get my parents' love was literally sanctified by this story. And every time I heard it, it broke me.
Yeah.
And it's like, maybe it's not such a good idea to use 2,000-year-old morally problematic fables to pump into your kids' heads.
Yeah, I don't know. Here's what I will say. As someone who, in my family, I was estranged from a family member that I loved dearly for many years, and then she decided to rejoin the family, and that was very difficult and very and problematic in a lot of ways. But in the end, I took the part of the father in this parable and just said, "Fuck it." I'd rather have this person whom I love in my life than the pride that I had to give up, in taking her back. And then all of the, she caused a tidal wave of pain in our family. And we all had to sort of swallow a lot. Yeah. But it was worth it to us because we wanted her back in our lives.
Yeah.
Well, I think I think that if it's the story between the prodigal son and the father,
right?
There is, and I have I have a very problematic relationship with the term and the concept of forgiveness, but there is something nice there. It's like, look, I love you no matter what, and you're welcome back. The reason it's a problem is the other son,
right?
Yeah,
right?
They could just take that out of the story, and it would be a far better story,
or it would just be sweet,
or just better explain.
Yeah.
Why this is okay, or why better explain the relationship of the father and the non-prodigal son, or something.
Yeah, I mean it's a story of forgiveness, and I can get behind that to a certain degree, but it also has like the last little moral is like, don't really bother sticking to it.
Yeah,
right. Because in the end, I'm going to take you.
It's a lot of these stories, these Bible stories, have what the writers or whoever codified all this garbage into a single book have these kind of M. Night Shyamalan twists that they think are super dope, but they just invert the morality. Right. So if it was just a story of a father and a son, it would be a story about unconditional love. Right. It would be, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, yes, you betrayed everything we believe and stand for, but you're back and I'll forgive it. And let's try again. Yeah. Right. But it has to grind the face of the other son in the dirt,
right?
And say, doing everything right gets you nothing. It's like Job, right? Doing everything, fuck you.
Totally.
Doing everything right gets you nothing. That's the moral.
It accidentally throws in a whole nihilistic side of it that literally torpedoes the whole thing and points you in the direction of like, well, none of this actually matters. It's all just subjective and whatever. So,
and I think a lot of I remember that I saw like seminary teachers and teachers in church kind of struggle to explain that last bit of the story.
Yeah,
because I think they all know that there's something wrong with that, or at least not really as beautiful and sublime as they're trying to make it out to be. So
yeah. So somebody always has to get fucking hurt. That's if the Bible made no claims about the afterlife or God or anything, you could look at it as just a tome of existential tales.
Right.
Everybody dies, everything sucks, there's no justice. The Bible.
It's almost as if there's like these nice little fables, and then some like depressed Russian got his hands on it, and
Dostoevsky put the final word.
Right, and just was like, no, this isn't any good. You know what I need to do? I need to make this terrible in some way.
Well, I think they succeeded.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for that.
Okay, Doug, I'm sorry. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, exactly.
Forgive me. I'll throw a party for you. And Dan, fuck you.
And new Patreon goal is therapy for both of these other uncles.
All the uncles in therapy.
All the uncles in therapy. Let's work on that. And with that, we'll move on.
Let's move on.
Oh, fellas.
Well, hello.
We should do a Patreon goal of getting this Liahona produced. I'm on board with it.
I want an alarm clock with a digital readout.
We can do all of it. We're capable. We just need to see the support come through. from our listeners.
Yeah.
It's your fault if this doesn't happen, you listening.
Yeah, what I like about it is it would be the least stupid idea around the Liahona ever, so I think we should go for it.
There you go. The Magic 8 Ball it is.
Let's take it back.
The people this week who are trying to make that happen, we've got some new listeners who are contributing, not new listeners, but new patrons contributing to our...
Both are good.
...to the cause. And those are, in no particular order, Kenny and Kyle's App Company... I hope they're good apps. Maybe they're making the Liahona app. I don't know. Yeah. Jessica and Uncle Mark, you need to come up with an impromptu saint for a confused British girl in an American world.
Oh, well, she is in particular need of, and I have somebody very much in mind.
Oh, good.
For a confused girl in Boy Meets World, and that is Saint Savonarola of Flavortown. And Saint Savonarola is the patron saint of ice fishing related mass casualty events, which
more common than you think.
There's too many to even mention.
Right.
And front end alignment of your vehicle, and also abrupt key changes in 80s rock anthems. So,
excellent.
Wow, that is a really good patron saint. That's one of the best ones.
Yeah, I hope she won't be a confused girl anymore because she's got that sort of patronage at this point.
Well, I feel bad for her being from and living in the two worst countries on the planet right now.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I would say that there are some definite contenders for much worse. However, in terms of precipitous drops in goodness,
right?
I feel like we're both Britain and the U.S. are just on a downward slide.
They're in a race to the bottom.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we both got big, dumb, blonde idiots kind of running it, so that's okay.
It's at least they're men, I guess.
Yeah. So if you want to join the ranks of the patrons and get a beautiful patron saint and a rambling discussion, you can do so at our website, which is howtoheretic.com. Hit the support us tab. Money, 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 make it rain. We love money. Or you can give us 5 stars anywhere that stars are available for purchase. Oh, wait a minute. They're not for sale. They're free. So come on,
goodness.
people. What's stopping you?
Yeah, exactly. And just a friendly reminder that 5 stars is the only brand of stars acceptable, even if you think we're only worthy of 3 or 4. You have to give us 5. That's the rules. We don't make them up.
That's a no. Clearly not.
So with that, thanks, everybody, and let's move on.
Kisses. So, Uncle Doug.
Ah! Scared me.
It's October.
It is.
It's October, and what happens?
It's the end of October.
Yes, the waning days of autumn before it turns to winter, and the membrane between the worlds begins to thin.
It's the most spookiest time of the year.
October is my favorite month. I love October. So
really,
yes, yep, I love
it.
And I used to when I was a kid, I loved Halloween, and then I hated it for a long time because it turned into just horrible frat boys and their girlfriends' dresses screaming, and then I started liking it again. I don't know why. So here we are. Dan, what do you know?
Well, here's the thing. Since it is that time of the year, I thought I'd do the How to Heretics first ever Watch Out for Ooh. That's right.
That was unrehearsed.
That was.
Can you believe that? That's the level of talent we bring to this show.
That is the up for it nature of the How to Heretics.
There's 3-part harmony, 2 countries. Fuck me.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody please fuck Mark. Anyway, that's right. I'm telling ghost stories, y'all. But before we dive in, some questions for you fellas.
Yeah.
First, without getting too in-depth with it, do you believe in ghosts?
Absolutely. 100%.
Do you?
Yeah, of course.
You do, Doug?
Yeah.
It feels a little... I can't tell if you're being facetious right now.
Of course I don't believe in ghosts.
Hey, what do you mean, of course?
I don't, but I have had two experiences. One, which was I later found explained away on YouTube as a really stupid phenomenon that I'm embarrassed that I was ever scared by, and one I think may have been a bad dream that I was not fully awake from. But I'm going to say no asterisk. I shouldn't believe in ghosts.
You guys, that was like one of the questions on the job application to get onto this podcast.
Yeah, but we fudged all of those questions. All of us lied on the application to ourselves.
And then when it said what my race was, there was only a box for white. Well, a little weird.
Right.
Wow. We're all fired all of a
It
sudden.
actually said delightsome.
Oh, my God. Okay. Second question. What percentage of Americans would you guess believe in ghosts?
I'm afraid of this answer.
It's got to be like north of 80.
Yeah.
Well, according to a recent YouGov poll that was this year, 45% of Americans believe in ghosts. Which, like you guys, I'm a little surprised at how low that is, considering the Christian nature of our country.
This country.
Yeah, and the credulous nature of this country.
For sure.
So, yeah, there you go. It's only 45%. Also the same number for demons, but we're not talking about that right now.
I'd love to see what that overlay is of that number of, what also those people, like, who did they vote for?
Yeah. Well, no, that's actually there.
Oh, really?
And even though it is a smaller number for Democrats than it is for Republicans, it's still a substantial number. Don't get proud of your tribe just because they're just as dumb as the other ones, or almost as dumb. Anyway, look, or maybe there are ghosts.
Almost as dumb is technically smarter.
I'll take it.
I'll take it.
But wait, I don't mean to tip my hand too quickly, because the truth is, do we know whether there are ghosts or not? Look, I'm just going to tell you, it's the reason that these people believe in ghosts is not based on nothing. As a matter of fact, just today on Facebook, a friend posted a link to an article that on a site called Awareness Act, which I'm not familiar with, but the post was from their science desk, and it came with this headline: "Science confirms that cats and dogs can see, quote, spirits and other frequencies we can't."
Wait, where did you read that?
Was this? Yeah.
That was Awareness Act, and the article references what appears to be a genuinely well done study by City University of London.
Okay.
And let me tell you, I've seen some pets engage in some very spooky behavior. My friend's Bernese mountain dog, for instance, gets very scared crossing a specific part of their floor. He's fine over most of the house, but in that one spot, he has to pause, sometimes for minutes, building up the courage to cross that 3 feet of space. He whines, he pants, he drools, he's visibly shook by this tiny area.
I'm convinced.
What could cause this? But it's not just animals. Here's a true story told in a TED Talk by noted skeptic and host of the Ono, Ross, and Carrie podcast, Carrie Poppy. She was living in a small, slightly run-down guest house, that sort of thing, in the backyard of another house. One night, this is in Los Angeles, and this is true. She claims this to be a true story. One night, she got a creepy, spooky feeling that she just couldn't shake, like she was being watched. She tried to ignore it, but it just got stronger. Then she started to feel pressure in her chest, a sinking feeling. She said it was, quote, like when you get bad news. And this wasn't just one night. It kept happening and getting worse. She would search the little shack and continually found no one there, but the feeling was unmistakable that she was being watched. Then she started to hear noises, like a whispered whoosh, almost like, and it was almost as if the sound was passing through her. Whoosh. She confided to a friend that though she knew it sounded crazy, she now was convinced that she was being haunted. She was terrified to go home and was frequently crying herself to sleep at night. Her friend told her to do a cleansing ritual So she bought some sage and burned it through the house, yelling at this ghost to get out, to no avail. Spooky.
Sure.
Yeah. Do you get a sense of dread in your attic or basement? No?
Or in just
Ghostbusters reference. Come on, guys.
I know. Right? Well,
Yeah.
I got another Ghostbusters reference later, but okay, fine.
Yeah.
And yes, here's the thing. Here's another story. This was told by my friend Adam. He actually created a wonderful spooky produced piece in episode 155 of Thank God I'm Atheist, which is going back a ways for TGIA. But it's right at about the 1 hour and 2 minute mark. If you want to pause this show, go and listen to Adam's retelling of this, because it's actually really, really creepy and spooky. And then come back here. All right, you're back? Great. Okay, so
Are you scared?
While you were gone.
While you were gone. No, here's the sort of truncated version of what Adam said. He was working at a secure care facility for mentally disturbed youth, and this is true. And it was housed in a former rest home, and was one of those spooky old cinder block and linoleum buildings from the 70s. He was talking to a patient who had called out to him from his room. And as they spoke, Adam heard the motion sensor in the hallway that they turned on after curfew go off. But he figured it was him that likely set it off. Then he heard another staff member hollering about something. Adam finished up with the kid and walked to and went to talk to the team leader in the control room. This is the room with all of the monitors and everything from the security cameras. Who was in that room with you? The team leader asked. He said no one was in there with them. Then the team leader rewound the security tape and showed him there was a grainy but distinct image of a third person moving around in the room that he was just in by the window. These are first-hand accounts of real phenomena. So to all you skeptics out there, I ask you, what do you think was happening in these stories? How can you not believe in ghosts with evidence like this?
Somebody said something.
Well, evidence from anecdote is not necessarily evidence, but it certainly can be convincing to the person going through that experience.
Well, and these are people. Adam is a man that I knew and trusted. I've seen the thing happen with the dog, my own self. You know what I mean? And Carrie Poppy is actually her whole show is devoted to skepticism.
Yeah, debunking things. Yeah.
So the question is, what do we have going on here? If that's not good enough for you, okay. So, if that's not good enough for you, I present to you the show Ghost Hunters.
Yes.
Which features two paranormal investigators using scientific equipment to find evidence of spooks, specters, and ghosts. That was your Ghostbusters reference right there.
Yes.
Like so many investigators all over the world, they go into purportedly haunted places and monitor temperature changes, spikes in electromagnetic field. They listen for EVPs, which are electronic voice phenomena, on highly sensitive audio equipment. They look for strange anomalies in their thermographic and night vision video recordings. Listen, a show that has been on for more than a decade, could they have done 218 episodes and 9 specials if there was really nothing to the work that they do?
Yeah, because that's how
Impossible.
TV works. They totally can. Yeah, absolutely.
It turns out that yes, absolutely, they very much can, and because nothing that these two goofball plumbers, and yes, both of the guys on the Ghost Hunters apparently worked for Roto-Rooter before they hit paranormal pay dirt.
Yeah,
Nothing that they have ever managed to show has proven anything, except that most television viewers aren't very well versed in how science works. The article that I referenced earlier about cats and dogs seeing spirits, it was linked to by one of my more credulous Facebook friends. It did indeed reference some good science, but all the science said was that the cats and dogs can probably see light in the ultraviolet spectrum, which we can't see. Then this idiotic website, Awareness Act, wrote a post that took that finding and postulated, with no evidence whatsoever, that this must mean that they must also be able to see ghosts.
yes. The only explanation is ghosts. I mean, come on, Right.
You know, because sometimes they seem to be staring at nothing or are afraid of sections of a house. This is why we don't believe the internet, kids.
I have a wonderful cat that you guys know.
Yes.
That is a sweet old lady now. And one time, to my great horror, I kind of accidentally closed a door on her a little bit. I didn't see her there.
Yeah.
And she was fine, but it didn't look fine. And that was 15 years ago, and she's still afraid of doors. Like, every time she walks past a door, she slows way down and looks at it, like going through doors. You know, now, if you didn't know that had happened, you might say, weird.
Yeah.
What's wrong with her when she comes to a door? Because doors are portals to another universe. The portals through which go, like...
You might well say that.
Yes.
Yeah. Or you might say that she's sensing something on the other side. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What was going on with my friend's dog then? Well, he's an idiot. And that little stretch of floor is the transition from the original house to an addition that they put on many years ago. And the floor has a very slight slope there, like almost imperceptible, but it exists. And when they took out the carpet and put in the laminate flooring, he slipped there a time or two. And now he's just terrified all the time as he crosses that little bit of floor several times a day, but has to work up the courage every single time.
Like my kitty. Yeah.
He's just a poor dopey dog. What about Carrie Poppy's spooky haunting? Well, she sought help on the internet and found a group of paranormal researchers who actually gave her a very scary and very true warning. But this wasn't a group of ding-dongs like the ones on Ghost Hunters or most of the paranormal researchers. These were skeptics, and they told her that they had seen what she described before. A sense of unknown dread, heaviness in the chest, auditory anomalies. These are all symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, my God.
She had a gas leak or carbon monoxide poisoning.
She called her gas company, who came out and told her that, yes, she did indeed have a gas leak, and it could have killed her if she had waited a minute longer to call them.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you definitely get carbon monoxide detectors in your homes.
Yeah.
Very important.
Well, I mean, she was almost killed by an invisible force.
She was.
You know?
Like, literally, there was an unseen menace in her house.
Truthfully.
That is true.
And her body was trying to tell her something, for sure.
Yeah. And this turns out to be a very common explanation of haunted houses. If you start to experience any of those symptoms in a specific place, get out, because not because of a poltergeist, but because of a very real poisoning problem.
Yeah, if your anxiety lasts more than 4 hours,
see a doctor.
I
also
read this,
get it checked out for carbon monoxide.
I don't know if you read this article, Dan, but I remember reading this fascinating article a few years ago, and I can't remember who it was by, but it was a scientist who kept seeing a form in the room with him in his lab. He kept seeing a shape forming on his right side, and every time he'd look over there, it would kind of go away.
Yeah,
and so he's like, okay, well, I'm a scientist. I've got to figure out what this is about. So he, after like a ton of analysis, what he figured out was there was some air takeaway system in his lab that had a fan that spun at a certain frequency, and it very slightly distorted the shape. The frequency very slightly distorted the shape of his eyeball.
Yeah,
on his right side, because that's where the fan was, and so there was this visual anomaly that would occur every time the fan came on. Wow.
And our brains are programmed to look for human shapes in whatever we see,
and
which is why we see
see
faces in clouds and whatever.
Right.
But if your brain doesn't know how to interpret the weird that's happening over here. It'll make it into a shape.
We're pattern-seeking animals, and there's evolutionary reasons for that.
Yeah.
It's
paired earlier. We talked about this in an early episode, Dan.
Exactly.
Dan did a whole segment on it, yeah.
If there's a rustle in the grass, your brain will assume it's something menacing, because if it's wrong, you're okay. If it's right, it just saved your life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If there's a bustle in your hedgerow, don't be alarmed now.
It will search for a shape. It will search for a face to see if there's a tiger in there.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So what about Adam? My friend Adam, who was spooked by what he saw on the security tape at the mental hospital where he worked. Well, I can't 100% guarantee that it wasn't a ghost, but I can tell you that I wasn't using a figure of speech when I said they used security tape. And I can tell you that it was a common practice back in the days before digital video recording to reuse tapes.
To rewind it.
And I can tell you that reused security tapes were often the source of proof of ghosts.
Interesting.
So you can do your own research from there.
And it's a visual artifact on a magnetic tape medium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, you know, I hate to ruin a good spooky story, but here's the thing. I think the point that I'm getting at here is that it's not that there's no such thing as ghosts. There's no such thing as ghosts. But that's not the point that I'm getting at. Hell, we can't even get believers to agree on what the hell a ghost is.
Right.
Is it physical? Is it an energy? If it's an energy, do the laws of thermodynamics apply to it? Because then that's wildly problematic. And if it's not, well, then it's outside of the realm of natural physics, and that's even wildlier problematic.
Right.
Are ghosts former people? Do they carry with them the memories and experiences of the corporeal selves? How? In what medium is that information carried? What is it? What keeps that information all together?
Right.
Because, again, thermodynamics tells us that shouldn't be possible.
Yeah.
You know, there's a scientist, Brian Cox, even went so far as to say that if there were ghosts, the Large Hadron Collider at CERN would have discovered them.
Right.
The point...
And wouldn't there be a lot of them?
Yeah, well, you'd think.
Leaving that aside.
Yeah, why aren't they...
Yeah.
Why are so many of them gone?
Right.
And a few of them are around.
Yeah, so who's
why
doing
are
that
they
math?
all Victorian children?
Yeah, exactly. And
Right,
why
mostly
are they
girls.
Why are they just standing there with their hair covering their face? It's
Yeah.
creepy.
So
Anyway, the point is, when there is unexplained phenomena, either properly investigate it or, without deciding what it is first, or leave it properly labeled as unexplained. It's when we decide that we must know what it is that we get ourselves into trouble.
Right.
It's when you use the word ghost or fucking aliens or whatever, that's when you're getting into bad territory because you're just guessing and then deciding that your guess is right.
Right. Well, I have a little story for you about that.
Okay.
Just the other day, and I don't believe in ghosts. I am on this podcast because I don't believe in stuff like that.
Okay.
But my buddy was looking at a property here in Salt Lake City that was potentially just for to demo the house off of it and develop it.
Sure.
But we went to look at the property. It was an old crack house, legit crack house. We couldn't get the key to open, so I reached in through the hole that the police had kicked in the door to get the doorknob open. There were troubling stains all over the carpet. And then we went to look in the basement. And it was one of those old Salt Lake basements where the stairs are really steep and the ceiling down there is really low. And I went down there first, and it was one of those houses where you have to kind of announce yourself just to make sure there's no one down there. We went down to the basement. I found the little light, pulled the string. We looked around. There were 4 pages of the Book of Mormon, by the way, lying on the ground. Didn't touch them. So my buddy went up the stairs. I turned the light off, and in the 3 or 4 feet it took to get to the stairs, I experienced such a sense of terror and dread. I ran up the stairs. It scared the hell out of me.
It's every horror movie, Doug. You've been conditioned by every fucking horror movie you've ever seen to know that a hand is going to come through those open stairs and grab you.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
And it's going to be a Victorian little girl.
That's right. I still fall for it, you know?
Well, I mean, we have unconscious brains that are working overtime at all times, looking for danger.
Yep.
And sometimes it just manufactures it. There are some interesting other phenomena that can cause a lot of these ghost sightings or whatever. Sleep paralysis is a really interesting thing that causes a lot of people to believe for sure that they saw ghosts or whatever. There's a lot of actual sleep problems that get people there. Toxic mold in houses. Can cause mycotoxins are apparently really good at causing delirium, dementia, pain, that sort of thing.
Yeah, you're shrooming. You're on shrooms at that point, right?
Only not the good kind.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's schizophrenia and dementia that can cause this sort of thing.
And can I give you a little personal anecdote of my own? I'll be very quick.
Sure, please do.
As a young skeptic,
is this the one that you referenced earlier?
So this is the one that I later found out what causes it. But so I was working on a movie, on some horror movies in Wisconsin. I was about 20 years old, and I went with a group of friends from the movie one weekend, and we drove up. And this is a well-known phenomenon. This is called the Paulding Light, right? So to our friends in northern Wisconsin will know this crazy thing. So you go up by Land O'Lakes, Wisconsin. You drive into this forest, dark as fuck, on a moonless night, and you park. And you turn off the lights, and there's a Forest Service sign with Casper on it. I'm not even kidding. And it says, "Park here to see the Paulding Light." So we all kind of wanted to be scared. It was super late at night. So we, in the fall, it was around Halloween. So we parked, we got out, and we're standing there. And all of a sudden, we saw these red and white lights kind of coming through the forest. And they just kind of danced around, and it was mysterious and spooky as fuck. And I always wondered, what was that? And there was a story about a train conductor, right? Some crazy train conductor, and
of course,
trying to save a woman or some thing. Well, it turns out there's a highway about 3 miles down, and with the atmospheric perspective in the forest, you think those taillights and headlights going in 2 directions are a ghost. And you can look it up. It's on YouTube. That's but in the moment, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. We were in the super dark forest, classic horror movie setting, right? And it was super scary, which was fun, right? I have to say I enjoyed that part of it, like actually being scared about it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Which is why we tell each other ghost stories, and we kids love to say Bloody Mary and scare themselves, and that's just part of human nature. Yeah, right. It's part of like maturing through levels of courage, but it's also bullshit.
Yeah, it's all. I really kind of hate to like make a declaration because people love their bubbles and whatever, but the truth is, it's all bullshit. It's all stupid bullshit.
Yep. All the same rules apply to ghosts that apply to gods.
You can write into us and tell us that we're wrong and all the reasons why, and maybe you can convince us.
And tonight, Uncle Dan will be visited by 3 ghosts.
Yes, exactly. One of them is the ghost of traffic past, and the other is the ghost of traffic future.
Traffic southbound and traffic northbound.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So there you go. Spooky ghost stories.
Ooh, watch out for Boo.
Have a happy Halloween, everybody.
All right, let's move on.
We'll move on.
Well, friends, that's it for this week's show.
Hey, if you've heard from a ghost, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email at howto@howtoheretic.com.
Or if Uncle Doug is also mad at you about the particulars of your upbringing, about which you had nothing to do, you can leave me a voicemail at 903-88-HOW-TO, which is 903-884-6986. I'm also on Twitter at HowToHeretic.
And thanks and much love to our awesome patrons.
And thanks to Cody Layton for editing the show.
And thank all of you friends for tuning in. We sure do appreciate you.
Bye, friends.
Bye.